small map. I think there were a couple laying out there, but the district was created back in 2013. And I'll explain a little bit about the timing of its creation, but the boundaries that are included, for those that you can see, is that gold colored area here. So so everything just to the southwest of the interchange of 164 and I-43, the northwest corner of that intersection were included within the boundaries. And the district was created back in 2013, and it was recognized that for that area to develop, infrastructure would need to be put in place for water and sewer. There was not a confirmed development in place at the time. However, the state was coming along and tearing up 164 and redoing 164. So there was a portion of the sewer line that would have gone into the right of way of that road, or actually even under the road. So the engineers had recommended at that time that that be put in place prior to the road going into place. Otherwise, the road would have been torn up to put the pipe in the ground. So that pipe was put in the ground. In order to make it TID eligible, or to be able to recover those costs from the TID had to be created beforehand. So the district was created back in 2013 in order to make those project costs eligible. Now, unfortunately, due to delay in development, there hasn't been any growth, and those projects other projects were not undertaken. But the village did enter into some obligations to pay for those utility costs. So the reason the amendment is coming forward now is there's a developer that's come forward that is looking to build on one of the properties that's currently within the district, but the cost for that development to move forward includes a holding tank and a mound system and septic system, and that wasn't contemplated at the time the project was created, so we needed to amend the project cost to allow for that. That development, while it's about $968,000 of cost, would generate about $8 million at minimum, conservatively $8 million in new value. So the assistance of that project cost would be done on what we call a pay-as-you-go basis, so the village would not be raising any money to make any payments to make this happen. The developer would put in the cost and recover those costs over the life of the remaining life of the district and gain it back from the taxes that are being paid on it, and a portion of those taxes would go back to reimburse the developer. So we call that a pay-go. We also have included in here the potential for the water and sewer cost to be run up to that site if there's future development that allows for it, with no plans for the village to undertake or have any more obligations unless there's a development that can support that. In addition, the plan was prepared with addition of some additional property just to the south of, on this map it says Big Bend, there's some lots right below here. It's kind of illustrated on the map in a project plan, in a smaller version of it, doesn't include the whole district. On page 7, there's the parcels that are hashtagged in red. If you've got colored copies of this, it's in red. And that is property that is currently owned by Town Realty that was subdivided into residential lots that is not currently developed, and the thick-out property to the south of that. So the plan was prepared with the proposal of those being included. So the amendment would accomplish two things: add project cost and amend the territory. The benefit for the added project is that the village will gain some additional increment to help support the obligations that it has outstanding. So it's kind of a meaningful benefit to do that. One of the other things that took place earlier this afternoon is we convened the overlapping taxing entities, the Joint Review Board, to review this. And we also asked them to provide for an extension, a 3-year life extension to this district to help include those future years to help support the village's obligations outstanding. They did approve that, so that will happen immediately, and the life of the district will be extended for 3 years. So during that discussion at the meeting earlier, there was some concerns about the additional territory being added, and Warren, I don't know if you want to comment on
Yeah, the joint review board, it was said that we would need to show a very strong argument for adding either of those properties. They are inclined to say no to adding the properties because right now they're both proposed as residential, and the lot size on one of them doesn't even qualify. So if we were to add those, we would need a definitive plan from both the FICOWs and Town Realty to illustrate that. So I guess it would be my recommendation to strip the border amendment and just go with the time amendment
Yeah,
for the planning commission.
Yeah, for the project cost. So this body, the resolution that you're considering approves the boundaries if we make a change to the boundaries and the project plan. So what the village president is recommending at this time, and it was based on discussion and feedback from that 11 taxing entities, is that at this particular point, the way those single-family home lots are structured, that they don't meet the finding of a mixed-use district, with maybe the intent that someday maybe would rezone. They're not comfortable leaving that in there since it wouldn't qualify, and they would rather see the village come back when there's a known plan for that, if it changes from that residential to something else, before they amend the district in. So, as well as the property below that, their feeling of the assurance that property wouldn't develop if it, that if it does develop residential, it wouldn't need TIF assistance, and you couldn't provide TIF assistance to those size of lots under the state law, statutory law. So I think that the recommendation is appropriate, that at this point, we don't make a boundary change, we would just add the additional projects for the near-term development. So it would be an amendment to the district, but only the project cost. With that being said, we'd have to make some tweaks to the resolution that you were provided, and we can kind of walk through what those might be. But that's at this point now. Again, the assistance to this near-term development would be on a pay-go basis, so it's strictly only if the taxes are collected would that reimbursement to the developer be made. It puts that risk on the developer and incentivizes them to perform in order to recover those monies. So it's a kind of a great way to undertake an agreement for new development within the community. So that's kind of a summary. I'm happy to walk through the schedules in the plan. They really are reflective of the cash flow of the district and representing the additional 3 years of life and the pay-go, the developer with their new taxes being collected.
The other thing to note that Dawn did say, we're allowed 4 border modifications through the life of the TIF. So if we don't do it now, we still have 4, if we would need to in the future. So that's always on the table.
What we were trying to do is trying to get it all done at
Right.
once, and that isn't going to work this time.
Yeah.
No, if the two property owners pursued a rezoning, then it could come back to the joint board for the approval? I got you. Okay.
Yeah, it was pretty clear that 3 of the members would definitely have voted it down. And it's a 5-member board, and you need 3 affirmative votes.
Yeah.
So you could go through this process, keep it in there, and we get to the end and maybe vote it down.
Where is the new proposed development with the mound system?
It's
Top of the hill, by, you know where the Schwabe property is? There's
Just past Hammer?
the fitness place on the top of the hill,
If
about
you
164.
got a copy of that map.
I do.
It's number 44, the little lot, if you can see the 44.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep, that's here for the,
And who's the proposed developer? Or is it just a,
Hastings.
Yeah.
yeah.
This one we discussed a couple months ago.
so they finally decided to come back?
I think they've been waiting for this.
This is part of it. There was a bunch of things I think they were waiting for. but-
We're still working with them on it, but it's not gonna happen in 2021, it'll be 2022.
So they would proceed with the ground system, and then if sewer and water comes in, or they're waiting for sewer and water?
They would start with the mound system.
The big thing they need is water.
Sure. Understandable.
They can live with a septic system.
Okay.
that holding tank is an incredible amount of money to fork out and then have someone come in with water a year or two
I was
later.
gonna say, they're gonna spend $1 million on a mound system, and then,
No, but almost $500,000 of that is the, you know,
The water.
Right.
the holding
You need
tank.
the water for fire protection on that side of the building?
So if we can get this well system through ahead of that, we can really save all of us money.
So the 3 years of extension, that takes us to the max, correct?
Yeah, there's 2 allowed extensions under state law now that can be granted if the Joint Board allows. One of them is a standard extension if you can demonstrate that the district may not recover all of its costs by statutory life, and they granted that one today. The other one is there was a change back in 2015 of the funding formula to the technical colleges, which dropped the tax rate down by 90 cents, which affected every TIF in the state if you had a TIF in place. You would have been negatively affected by that, but you weren't generating any tax revenue during that period of time, so we cannot demonstrate that you were financially negatively impacted. So we weren't able to go for that additional 3 years. So we could have maybe gone for 6, but because we couldn't show that there was no loss in revenue because we didn't have revenue coming in, there was no added value to that district during those years.
All right, so we're at the max where we can be right now.
Yep.
If for some reason they would change the distribution values again, we can go for the additional 3.
No, the 3 years is all we have. It wouldn't
Okay.
change the life. And so I guess at the time, depending on when that future opportunity comes along, we'll have to evaluate. It should be enough time remaining to recover costs, but, there's other ways to address that as well, like overlaying portions of the property of the district to start the clock over.
The timing on it.
so if you extend it 3 more years,
Which we just did. We cannot extend it any longer.
what happens after that?
That's just when it expires, that's how long
TIF
we're able
closes.
to recover the funds that.
That gives us
Yeah,
till
if you-
2037 to recover the funds, I believe.
Yes.
Well, it started what,
2037.
2013 is when it was started?
It was started in 2013, yes.
And then,
20 years.
so 20,
2037, it was a 20-year TID.
okay, all right, and that's with the 3 years that we were just granted.
Yeah, the last revenue collection will be 2033. Or
2030.
37, I'm sorry, 2037.
That's always a little.
There's one additional
Year.
year.
That hangover, effect, I call it, where it's on the tax roll.
When is my math not working out? When that
Well, when it
becomes
was-
36?
It was, 36 is
The end of it.
the end of it, and this district would expire, it was created on May 16th. So in May 16th of 2036, it would stop, but you will still
Oh,
collect
you'd
one
still
more
get-
year of taxes.
okay.
Yeah, that's how you increase it, yes.
Okay,
Exactly.
all right.
Yeah, otherwise your math is 24 years, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
It was like, wait,
So
Yeah, I know.
it's
it's
been a long day, but.
not important, I guess, as to when you would put that 3 years on. But with this potential development coming on, it would be good to have it in place before they break ground, so we can maximize our increase.
Yeah, the frozen value, you know?
I don't really see any gain by not doing it now.
Yeah,
Right.
it's a no-brainer that way, as far as the extension goes.
Yeah, as long as they were meeting it. There's no questions or concerns.
What was the discussion in relation to the cash flow analysis with us not being able to repay the project costs within the life of the project? I mean, I just want to put on a record that that's a lot of information to absorb that I got yesterday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Like, it's a $14 million project and I had basically 3 hours to look
Yeah,
at
and I
it.
guess the other thing to point out, we've called it a $14 million project, but we're not showing spending that
Correct.
extra 13 million. All we're talking about really with this amendment is the allowance to provide a pay-go incentive of $980,000 to this near-term development.
Sure.
We put the other water and sewer costs in the plan, so that if this larger commercial or an industrial development should take place, you don't have to go through this process for that. I mean, we're trying to save the village the,
Right,
and then
sure.
again, just add those costs. So it sounds like we're gonna have to amend, add the property, if that property needs to be included, but you don't have to amend to add the project costs. So we're not showing any spending of this, there would be a lot of action and decisions before anything like that took place. We just identified it in the plan. So as far as the negative number is a result of the $1 million pipe that went into the ground back in 2013. That's the cost that's out there that you're trying to recover.
Do we have an estimated cost on what we've invested so far to develop TID?
That's the money she talked
That's
about.
Yeah, that's what she's talking about.
You borrow.
We haven't done any development up there outside of a couple of water studies. What do you figure, maybe $40,000-$50,000
Yeah,
is what we've got into that.
within the
Plus
last
the-
year or whatever. Prior to that, the only money that was spent on that was the pipe in the ground from
Yeah.
when the development, or the highway was opened up. That's part of, that's that 1.5, whatever $1 million debt that we've been carrying.
Yeah, $1 million.
Are we still carrying that, or are we in
Yeah.
process of paying?
Oh, yeah, we're paying on it, but it's still part of the debt.
Are we accruing interest on that?
Well,
Or is that being factored as well?
I'm sorry,
Is that being factored as well?
that's
That's part of the cash
that's
flow.
why that decrement exists, is because you're paying into the future on that debt obligation.
Right, I didn't know if you have prior debt, I didn't know if, that we haven't got any tax to pay for it. The interest that's accrued off of that debt is now village responsibility, or if that just accrues back into the,
It
But if you
accrues
did-
into the TID, but
Okay.
the debt has to be paid. So if
Right.
there's no TIF revenue, the village is obligated to make the payments. So the village has been making payments on that debt.
But if it goes up there and they get the money, then it goes back against that too.
Right, so if you have, like, just this last year, there was, new value added to that TIF district was 802, I mean, the first 2 years of the district lost value, so that hurt. But then there was 290,000 new value, 400,000 new value, 600,000 new value, 157. Last year was $802,000. So all the property out there, if anything was added or built, was adding value. So anything that happens in here, besides this proposed development that we're talking about, will just generate revenue that will help towards that debt. We're not making any assumptions for that. So if value starts coming online, that will help. But that portion of this new development will also help defray the costs. So I think it's worthwhile for that development to happen and to provide that incentive to them to generate some additional revenue to help support the village's debt. Now, we're assuming it, at this point, with no new growth out there, that there would be a gap at the end of the day. And that would be basically then absorbed by the village if the district closes.
Do we have an estimate on that?
In the cash flow, about $1.2 million.
1.2 if we extended 3 and 1.58 if we don't.
there would be an end of life that's still owed.
Correct.
Okay.
Well,
With no development.
The debt service that you have now will be paid off in 2033. So you'll quit making payments, anything coming in after that will happen. We gave that, but anything coming in the meantime, so it's about $100,000 a year that the villages had to pay. Or will be paying on that debt service going forward.
So I can understand it a little bit better. We want to develop the TID. In order to do that, to get people to come in, we have to put in, they've got to be water infrastructure there, correct? For that to develop the majority of the site. But you're talking about a situation where you kind of pay as you go, or there's, the taxes come in over time, but where does the money come from up front to put in the sewer treatment plant and the water and all that stuff?
That's separate developers.
Yeah, that's not part
We're
of
not
this.
that far
That's-
yet.
That's if and when that development would start.
This-
This is purely about the one property in question.
This one near-term development would really like water. but they're willing to do a pay-go on this to put in their own well, their own holding tank, and their own septic. And we're covering that, you know, through, you know, the 90% ballpark number
We're covering that cost
on taxes.
on taxes.
Pay the tip.
On the taxes they pay.
On the,
Right.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
So if they paid $100,000 a year in taxes, they would get a, you know, $90,000 tax credit, and we, the village, would get 10.
Sure.
so
Hypothetical
they would
numbers.
come up with the money to put that infrastructure into their site and
Right.
get reimbursed over time. The other water and sewer, that's part of the reason, you know, that's the big question. The village cannot go out and raise that capital on its own. You cannot statutorily borrow that much. So you'd have to have development participation to come up with that money to pay for it.
Sure.
So that's part of the, you know,
Yeah.
part of the, probably the lag, and well, it hasn't happened, but
Yeah.
I think there's interest, significant interest that there might be support from developers going forward.
What it means is we'll see significant revenue increase on taxes come 2038, I guess. Right? I mean, that's what it is. We're gonna see all the development, but we're
And you
not-
won't benefit at the village until.
Right, so we won't
So that's
benefit
correct.
until 2038.
And neither does the county technical college and school district.
Right,
Well, the
exactly.
school district is kind of, so, but that's why they're.
Well, that's on the traditionally always has to be repaired, replaced, upkeep, and so forth at that point, which
Yeah.
drives the cost further, and that's part of the problem.
Well, and
You
that's,
bring business in, but it takes a while to get back.
right. Well, and then the areas that we wanna amend and add to it, we're going to be residential. I don't, off the top of my head, I don't know how many proposed properties are going to be there, but did we do any, is there any kind of a cost that said this is how much tax revenue would have been generated by putting that subdivision in? Because obviously subdivision,
The Harvest View subdivision can't go in as drawn,
okay,
because the lot sizes are too big. It's not dense enough homes. There was nothing that I'm aware of for Vic-out properties. That's just,
Yeah, we were working together with town, and it's basically the same thing. They're acre
Yeah.
lots.
yeah, 1 acre lots don't fly.
But then you need sewer and water once you get smaller
Right.
densities, which
Right.
we don't have. So you gotta catch 22 going on.
You know, it doesn't.
that's not the one that we granted the extension to, that
Yeah, it
had the
is.
plat, had the
Yeah.
plat already done.
Harvest View,
Yeah.
right.
So,
And I was one step further behind him.
That's why the joint review board
Yeah.
said they were probably not inclined to approve the boundary amendment because
right,
of what's out there right now.
yeah.
And, and honestly, town would like to rescind that, and they're looking to go commercial.
But like I
That,
s-
that
but like I
hasn't
s-
happened yet.
It hasn't
Right,
happened, but
hasn't
that's what,
happened yet,
that's
so
the
we have to
direction.
deal with what is right now,
Right,
and that's where we're at. I mean, we don't have the ability to put those in and change the border. We could recommend it as a planning commission, the board could do it, the JRB is gonna shoot it down.
Yeah, and the negative there is then it would shoot down the ability to provide this other incentive for
Right.
the developer that wants to build.
That'll start getting the village money back in a couple of years.
That one truly is a, but for you doing that, it's not gonna happen.
Right.
And having it happen will only help bring additional revenue to the cause.
So as of right now, we have about 1.2 million outstanding debt against the
principal outstanding?
Yep.
Yes. So without this development, it'd be like 125,000, you know, it's to 92, 99. With this development, we'll help reduce that. And that has totally been locked in stone and a less contribution to the developer, but that's how we run this process.
But we're beholden, if we want to develop the rest of it, we're beholden to a developer to put $13 million out there. Is that correct?
We are right now.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
That's what needs to happen.
I don't know if 13 is the right number, but yeah, you're
Along,
looking the right way.
along them lines.
Right.
That's why we're doing the study to evaluate the real number on the water.
Anybody else have further questions or comments? Yes, sir.
Not my role necessarily, but just curious about if this development was to occur, that's contemplated, how much additional, what's the additional increment that's going to be created about? And how much in net tax dollars will that generate per year?
Which, are you talking about the initial, the proposed project from the Hastings development or the longer term one?
No, in the short term.
The short term is about $8 million in value, and that would generate about 125,000
Per year,
per year.
over 10 million is 1,250,000.
Although you'd be making that payroll contribution to help reimburse them for offsetting their costs. But the other proposed, or proposed, but the other potential for that site is like 245 million if that full industrial commercial development were to take place. So there's a significant opportunity there, but again, it's gonna come down to the ability to raise the capital, put the sewer and the water in place.
Now, are we, and the improvements that are going to be reimbursed to the developer going to ultimately be part of the public system?
Well, it depends on the water. The sewer wouldn't, because that's a
Private.
private septic tank. But the water, depending on how you provide water to the site, that could be part of, I don't know, that would be an engineering question. I'll figure that out.
Thanks.
So I guess, Attorney Sherber, I guess I have a question for you too. So if this body chooses to recommend adoption of a resolution, would they have to move to adopt the resolution that they were provided and then someone amend it to remove any language you talk about the body amendment? How what's the procedure for that?
Now, let me think about that one.
Okay, because right now, there's some things that we would strike out of this resolution that was provided to get rid of the discussion about the body.
I think we've done that before, where we just amended it on, we talked through what the amendment was and then approved that.
Yep.
And through the discussion, we said, okay, this is what the proposed changes to the resolution would be. And then approve it based on that being changed, right? Not that current state, the future state.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood your question. I agree with what you
Okay.
said. Yeah.
So, do you want me to walk through what we would strike on this?
That'd be best.
Okay. So, I'm not suggesting you
Yeah, there-
do that before you make either this motion or this. So, the first thing was the resolution designated the proposed amended boundaries. we would say resolution approving project plan amendment. So designated proposal and boundaries and would be removed, it would say resolution approving project plan amendment. The tax increment district number one. Then the first two whereases are fine. The third whereas, I would suggest desire to amend the project plan and strike and boundaries. So just another project plan of the district. Then the next whereas, such amendment will eliminate A, because we're not adding territory, and just change the B to A. And then nothing else, because all the rest of it is because the amendment has to follow the state statute, those things have to be required, so we're okay with that. And then on the second page, the next whereas is fine, because that is all done. And then the following whereas, I would just strike in the third sentence, proposed amendment to the project plan, strike and boundaries of the district party for interested party to express their views. And then now therefore be resolved, I would eliminate number 1, renumber 2 as 1, and renumber 3 as 2, and eliminate the, strike out the and boundaries of that sentence as well. So amend the project plan of the district promotes what we development in the village. I think that covers everything. I don't know that we'll have to have an exhibit A, because we're not changing the legal description of the district, so that may be removed as well, or maybe exhibit A becomes the plan itself, but I'm not as worried about that. Just.
You know what resolution number this would be?
2001, 02.
Yours doesn't have it at the top?
That's the signed one.
You're striking off at the same time. Just wanna make sure. Any discussion on the amendments?
Seems like the amendments are straightforward.
Shoulder, any comments on the amendment changes?
Just one question, Don. On the second whereas on the second page, did we strike anything there?
Yes.
Yeah, and strike the and boundaries.
And boundaries at the end.
Well, I mean, you did have a public hearing to send proposed amendment of the plan and the boundaries. That was a topic of discussion. Well, we may have anticipated this direction it was going. I mean, I think it's in there.
I guess it's factual, he's saying that
Yeah.
the meeting was about both, even though we didn't approve, we're not approving both. That doesn't make some sense.
I just leave it in there, other than that, I don't have anything else.
Thank you. If there's no further questions or comments on the resolution, I'd entertain
to approve resolution 2021-02 as amended through discussion.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion?
Are we approving the resolution or suggesting for it to go forward to the board? I'm sorry?
Approving it.
Approving it, okay. So this will not go to the board then?
The board will have their own resolution.
They have a separate.
Yeah,
Oh.
it's a separate
That's
resolution.
just the same thing about the board.
Okay. I didn't.
That's what I was looking at.
Yeah.
We amended this.
I will call for the vote then, if there's no other comments. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution passes with amendments. Thank you, Don.
You're welcome.
Appreciate your help.
No problem. I will provide you with the new plan before it goes to the board.
Move back to item 3, consideration and approval of minutes from June 24th, 2021 regular meeting of the Planning Commission. I think we've all had plenty of time to review.
Motion to dispense with reading the minutes.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
You seconded that one.
Huh?
You seconded it.
I didn't. I was gonna say it was Mike and Tony. I didn't find anything with the first set of minutes. Motion to approve the planning commission meeting minutes from Thursday, June 24th, 2021 as submitted.
So moved. Actually, I think we so
Was
moved.
that a second or?
Yeah, second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes approved for that. Consideration and approval of minutes from July 1st, 2021 special meeting and joint public hearing with the village board of the planning commission. And I'll throw in July 22nd, 2021 regular meeting and joint public hearing with the village board of the planning commission. We have 2 more sets of minutes here. Motion to dispense with the reading of.
I'll make that.
Motion and a second, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. The only thing I found on the July 1st ones, there's a comma missing after the word quail. And on the July 22nd minutes, Commissioner Zambruski's name is misspelled.
Oh. That never happens.
On page 3, I am assuming that's supposed to be the village of Big Bend, Wisconsin, not WL.
Yeah, probably.
I don't know if it needs to be added in or not, but under the engineer's report number 8, I had asked a question in regards to the Lake Park condominium development. I don't know if that needs to go on official record or not, but I had asked about the soils from the drive.
Yeah. I have it.
Okay, that's just not listed in here.
Which day?
For the 22nd.
What were you saying, Ann?
Oh, I was just letting you know that I had my
I had just asked a question about the Lake Park condominium development and removal of soils from the adjacent property that they were, had permission to build a road across, but just what was happening with the spoils.
That was just during the engineering report too, right?
Right.
Yeah, I was gonna say it wasn't on the agenda items. Gotcha.
motion to approve the minutes from July 1st and July 22nd with the amended items.
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Item 4, old business, village staff / officials review, discussion, and status update to the planning commission regarding the Cajun Phase 2 fill project. The property is located at approximately and surrounding South 72 West 23085 National Avenue, and it is zoned B3 General Business District. I don't know if there was
There wasn't anything in the packet.
anything in the packet. No, Will did an inspection up there yesterday and today. Cajun brought in 5 quad axle loads of topsoil, seeded, halfway mulched, 2/3 of the way mulched.
I think Will said 3 bales.
Yeah, he needs a little more mulch on top of it, but he did apply topsoil, and we're cautiously optimistic he'll have the adequate growth needed by next week.
Where did they put the topsoil?
I'm sorry?
Where did they apply?
The required spots that were bare, in the last inspection report, there was some stony areas and patchy areas where grass wasn't growing, so,
I think the majority of it was on the top of the.
yeah, on the plateau. There was a couple spots on the old driveway going down, and there was a grill down by the wattles on the spillway.
Okay, I can't remember a couple of those.
Will sent out some pictures this morning of what had been done and what his opinions were.
It's holding up all right with the rain that we've had?
Yeah, the site has.
Yeah.
It just needs a little bit more vegetation, and if it's not done properly by the end of the month, Eric has obtained 2 quotes to have a private landscaper go in there and finish it off using John's surety bond. He was sent a notice of violation last week. If it's not up to snuff tomorrow, he will be sent another one on Monday. And we will shut him down and out of his site on the 1st of September. Well, the 3rd. Because that actually need board approval.
So the notice of violation was sent last week.
Yeah, last week, I don't remember what date exactly, but
But that's it. Second one will go out tomorrow.
yeah, Will's gonna do a site inspection Friday, and yeah, the next letter will go out on Monday.
Wednesday, the 18th.
Wednesday, you said the 18th?
Anything to add?
No, you asked about the rain events. I did see a picture that Will had, after the rain event, the pond was discharging and it was very clear.
That's a good sign.
coming up. Yeah. So,
Yeah, I mean, if you had seen the pond last year versus this year, it's like a mirror.
yeah. So it's just finishing up so that DNR can sign up.
Right.
Sign off and get out of there.
We haven't heard any rumblings back from the DNR on him terminating his NOI, which I respectfully requested him to retract after I found that out, and I don't think he did. So I don't know if they're just sitting on it and waiting.
You mean he requested?
Yes, Sahak did against the village's wishes. So I don't know where that's gonna end up, but we have it documented that we did not want that, even that we wanted it retracted. And the DNR has record of that as well.
Oh. I don't know why the DNR would be in any hurry to approve that.
And that one's sitting on the shelf.
That too.
Yes.
On purpose.
Right.
We'll get to that when we get to that.
So, yeah, if we don't have anything else, I will move the agenda along. There's no action required by us, just a review. Item 5B, review, discussion, and possible approval of the business site and operating plans for Gary Pullhammer, doing business as Diversified Truck Services Incorporated, to occupy the buildings and sites located at West 224 South 8505 and West 224 South 8495 Industrial Avenue. For example, BBV tax parcel numbers 206-8052 and 206-8053 respectively, with his auto body, vehicle painting, and related storage uses. These parcels contain 1.06 and 1.07 acres of land respectively, and both are zoned I-1 Industrial Park District. The current owner of these properties is Minor Investments LLC.
Yep, Mr. Pullhammer operates Diversified Truck Services on the south side of Bucket Street, out at Industrial Avenue at this time. He's on the west side of Industrial Avenue, south of Bucket. What he's doing is proposing to purchase these 2 lots on the north side of Bucket, phase in his ownership, and transfer his entire south side business up into these 3 buildings on the north side of Bucket Street, including adding paint bay to the north building, where there's already 1 paint bay in place.
Right.
The character of the uses of those 3 buildings is very much consistent with the character of their uses right now. So once he's able to vacate his building on the south side, he'll have an opportunity to kind of clean that all up, get everything out of Bucket Street, get the building spruced up, and lease that out to some other tenants in the future. Really from a site standpoint, these are 2 existing non-conforming lots. They don't comply with the minimum 2-acre lot size over there. But because he's not constructing anything new, new buildings, creating new offsets or setbacks that would comply, he's okay to leave them as is. I always encourage, when there's common ownership of adjoining non-conforming lots, encourage that they be joined, but it isn't something we can require of him. So, with respect to changes that I would be recommending or conditions to be attached to any approval that the commission might be inclined to grant for site plan of operations approval, I really just look at kind of those incremental things that we can do to improve a site. And to be honest, these 2 sites aren't in bad shape. They're pretty decent right now, buildings included. But right now, he doesn't propose to do any changes to the site lighting, to the site landscaping, or to signage. So the conditions that I was recommending include encouraging the applicant to combine the 2 lots, requiring that the existing overhead and pedestrian doors on the buildings that are visible from the public streets be painted or repainted. Some of them are kind of discolored, almost rusted a bit. So they sort of transition in colors. If those could be repainted, and these would be conditions that would have to be implemented within 12 months of approval is the standard. But recommending that those would be color matched or complement the building itself. Require the installation of a couple of trees. Specifically, the village code says at least 1 tree and 2 shrubs for every 1,000 square feet of green space. And then we have street tree planting requirements also. There are some trees out there now, pines that sit right at the corner. My suggestion is that there would be one tree planted, a deciduous, on the south side near the building furthest west on Bucket. I know there's a wellhead in there, but I think there's room to also fit a tree in there. And then at least 2 tree plantings along the Bucket or along the Industrial Avenue side of your front green space. Those would be on the private property, not in the right of way. Then with respect to the existing fence and the gate that extends north of the north building, my recommendation would be that since you can see back into the yard area through there, that existing chain link fencing gate have slats put in it to create a privacy screen. There's pros and cons to that. The police department can't see in when there are slats in there. but it also obscures the unsightly view to the kinds of things that can get parked and stored in the back of these industrial sites like that. So my recommendation is to add the slats. It's up to the commission to decide, and just requiring that that gate be kept closed when it's not in use. Condition number 5, that day trip personal use type vehicles are the only ones that would be parked in the private on-site spaces between the buildings and the public streets, so that we wouldn't get a situation developing where we have work-related trucks or heavy equipment or anything like that parked out in front. And then lastly, all other vehicles, materials, equipment, or supplies parked and stored outdoors on the site have to be concealed from the surrounding view. So with that, I'll turn it over to the commission. I really think it's a great adaptation of these existing buildings for Mr. Paulhammer's uses. And hopefully we'll get another new tenant to come in your south side.
So you're currently in the 2 buildings on the south side?
That's correct.
Okay. I see there's a listing here for Max powder coating. Is that part of you?
That's a division of us.
Okay. So that business would be moving over there as well?
That's correct.
Okay. As well as diversified truck services?
That's right.
Is there any other entities that would be in there?
Nope.
So basically everything from the south side would get moved up to the north side?
That's correct.
Do you have any questions or concerns related to what Mary recommended, her recommendations?
No.
Any concerns from the fire inspector?
When the service inspector is ready, took care of everything.
I would assume that this is gonna give you quite a bit more room.
It will.
At least.
We'll be able to clean up around it a little bit more.
Sorry, I'm looking at.
Yep,
the
yeah.
Shot, I'm not trying to scroll through text or something. Does that mean that like some of the, I think you had some 18-wheelers out there, it looks like, for storage and stuff?
So a lot of that stuff is there for work.
Okay.
Some of it is there at storage. But most of the trucks that are out there are being worked on
Okay.
at some point.
So would any of those auxiliary storage units?
Yeah, a lot of that stuff will all be moved.
That'll be moved up to the.
It'll be either moved or completely off either one of the properties.
One of the concerns I have from environmental side, you have oils, flammables, things like that that. would be
That's all taken care of inside the buildings.
Okay.
Everything is secured the way it's supposed to be.
No exterior drains or
Nope.
anything, stormwater drains affected by any
No.
of your.
Everything we have with paperwork when it gets taken out.
Crystal clean hauls it out of there.
Crystal clear?
Any hazardous waste.
Sure, okay. I see that you have hours of operation 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday?
That's correct.
Okay. I would just say, I mean, you already know this because you're on the south side of the road, but since you'd be a new resident on the north side, I guess, just keep in mind that there is residential directly to your west
Right.
for any noise factors or anything like that. especially on Saturdays.
Even a lot of that stuff, well, everything that we have for that is all approved by the state, where it's supposed to be for noise and stuff like that, so.
Sure. I just didn't know if any operations or anything would be changing.
No, it shouldn't change at this point.
Any other questions?
Yeah, if they're okay with the recommendations from the planner, then
Yeah, no, we're fine with that stuff.
I would make a motion to move forward following recommendations from planner Jasinski.
I'll second
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck.
Welcome to the north side.
Yeah.
I can't say welcome to Big Ben.
Item 5. Planner's report.
Right, the first item is just about a temporary,
Yeah. There are 2 buyers. That's why.
You made a point to say that.
all right. The second number 5, first item, is a temporary use that's planned to happen at Christ Evangelical Lutheran on Maple Avenue on September 12th. They want to have a pig roast. Ironically, it's the day after the Lions Club has their pig roast.
We're not gonna get any rumbles in the streets now, are we?
They are aware of that.
They are aware, they didn't balk at proceeding on account of that, so they're good. I went through all of these details with the individual who's representing the church in this temporary use approval request. It's an administrative level approval, a staff level approval, because it doesn't involve liquor or alcohol sales outdoors at all, or consumption. And also, it's only a one-day event, so. I went through all of these conditions, all of these things that she is proposing with the police chief about 2 weeks ago. And chief actually met up with her out at the site, and they went through all of the details. We will be putting in writing the final approved set of conditions for her operation. But essentially, I know that she was not going to be able to close Maple Avenue. Chief was recommending against that because he didn't like their internal circulation plan. He's going to have them having cars enter off of Clark Street, come in along the south side of the school, and then turn south immediately to exit to Maple Avenue. That way, we don't have traffic going past the band area, which would be where the playset is. He didn't want kids out there dancing and playing while vehicles are driving all the way straight through to Jackson. So, long story short, Chief has reviewed all of these conditions, the hours, and so forth. They have had a meeting of minds out at the site. We will be memorializing the terms of the approval in writing for her prior to the event. And that's the update I wanted to give to the commission. Next item, with respect to the update to the zoning code, adding new and used auto sales establishments on that very limited basis to the B1 district. The village board did also agree with that, so that's been adopted as a change to the code. The conditional use grant request of of Ritzerati to develop his use over here on the corner was also approved by the village board.
Do we know offhandedly if he's purchased or moving forward at all?
He had already purchased it.
Yeah, he's,
He already had owned that property
Oh,
and the house in the south of it.
oh, that's right.
So,
Never mind, I'll redact that back.
I didn't know whether he bought it or not,
yeah.
until now, but I do know that he's been sending landscape plantings and light samples and things, so he is working on getting to completion. The temporary event for Richie's went through all of those conditions with the police chief, and he also was going to meet with Richie out on the site and let him know that, kind of go through those conditions, walk him through how the site will operate, so they're all on one page there as well. The sign across the street looks a little bit different than the specific details of the sign we approved, but with respect to location, it's in the right place. So they're proceeding. It's already up, one side is operational. I'll give you another update in a month. That's all I have.
With respect to chapter 16, we have the Chucker Pheasant Amendment and this one now. Will you have time to incorporate them? And yeah, we really gotta get that published.
Would like to publish it out on the website.
We gotta get that master copy done. I have to get the master copy done, yes. I'll tell you, Elena, if you inquire with me next week once or twice to remind me that that's priority, I can remind myself. I'll work on getting that done in a week or so.
Outstanding, thank you. Item 6, Fire Inspector's Report.
Well, fire inspections have been good, no problems. Everything's been taken care of that needed to be taken care of, and we'll continue on it the rest of the year. I don't know if you guys know or not, but the fireworks will be this Saturday up at Kelly's Bleachers for Vince Siegel's memorial. So that's this weekend, Saturday. And got the fire department will be up there taking care of things, whatever needs to be done. And I don't know if you guys remember, but Papa Stash had that grill. We needed to put that fencing around it.
Yeah.
That has been completed and has been done for quite a while. I didn't bring it up. I thought maybe Mary knew about it or you guys knew about it, but you do now. And it did a very beautiful job. Very good. So that's a feather in his hat that he needs really bad. Other than that, that's all I got. Got any questions for me for anything? Guess not. Everybody's smiling. That's not
You
good.
bet. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I do it at any time. I'll send you the bill.
Thanks. Building Inspector's Report.
He says he has no report.
Beautiful. Item 8, Engineer's Report. Naomi?
Right, Douglas Court is first thing on my list. We are coming up to the September 1st deadline that was put on the development by the village board. And there are a few punch list items. There's been a lot of work out there since the first village board meeting where we addressed it. The pond is essentially all rated, ready to go. The outlet structure has been put in. There's just some stabilization that needs to be done as far as like matting and maybe some touch up on final grade. This shoulder out there has a couple areas that need to be filled in. I think there was some work early this week on one of the sides. Hopefully they're thinking the other side's coming still because we think that it needs to be done. I'm looking at a memo sent to Mr. Khan by Mike Timmers, our construction inspector, on Thursday, August 18th, with the punch list items. Seating, finishing up remaining seating and matting, especially off of John Drive where they took construction access that needs to be restored. Just some miscellaneous work, general cleanup. And then we will look for information to get the road certified and the pond as well in order to finish that up. those two items, I'm sure will not be done by the first, but we've got a majority of the site is done, and it held up in the last rainfall. So, I mean, I'd say we're compliant until we get the as-built and know what volumes we have out there.
Very good, thank you.
So that's Douglas Court. Lake Park Storage Condos, they're requested a letter of credit reduction for some of their phase one work. And we're hoping to get that approved by the village board on September 2nd. Our inspector has verified all the items that are on the letter of credit reduction, including most of the grading for the pond. We're retaining some of the materials because we don't have as-built on the pond. Will Hine has been out there doing the erosion control inspections. He says the site looks pretty good, no evidence of off-site drainage, no evidence of sediment leaving the site. The pond has not filled up, which we were kind of expecting it would, but the grades aren't out there, aren't final grade yet. Obviously, they're still in the middle of construction, so we're keeping some cost estimates or some letter of credit so that until we have the final as-built on the pond. There was a question about the excavated material from the access or from the private road off of Edgewood. I asked Jamin, he said that material has been stockpiled and is going to be tested, and I asked him that like a week after the last board meeting. So it's possible that that test came through. I said the village would like a copy of that testing report and final, documentation of what happened to that spoil material. Other than that, they're moving forward with the first phase and putting in the concrete pads for the first couple of buildings. I haven't actually been out there because my inspector goes out there and Will goes out there, so I'm gonna drive by, but when I'm in the area. We don't wanna.
Yeah, we have frame up already.
Building one.
Oh, good.
So,
We don't want them too hard with inspection fees.
No.
But Rebel Brook East. We're working through the developers agreement with Mr. Stiza. I talked to him today. He has forwarded me some cost estimates for the letter of credit amount that we need to approve. We're still waiting on some of the cost estimate information in order to take a review, look at that and make sure that we have a letter of credit that's acceptable for the village. It's kind of our next step.
Yep, we sent him our template developers agreement, which captures all of our village concerns, and asked him to complete it with his attorney and get construction costs to Naomi. He replied with a written development agreement from an attorney. So we're having to kind of cross-reference our template to his draft to make sure everything we require is captured in there, and then have the village attorney review his document for make sure it's accepted. Right, so he's kind of taking a slow road on that. But
We did address the drawdown on the letter of credit at staff level except for the final. Any agreement?
Oh, well, we don't have wording yet, but we're gonna include that in the developers agreement for Rebel Brook East and.
Just to
present it
streamline
here.
time, I mean.
Yeah, I mean, so what's happening is, with Lake Park condos, storage condos, the letter of credit reduction, each one has to go through the village board. And it's been my experience in other communities that staff, at the staff level, we prepare recommend a credit reduction, and then that just happens at staff level until maybe Warren suggested the final release of the letter of credit, then would go to the board instead of because he could request a reduction every 2 weeks if he wanted, technically.
Right.
And that's a lot of,
I mean, if you
Four
have
weeks, only
a
once.
hefty letter of credit and you're
Yeah.
looking to get, several $100,000 pared down every 3 weeks or whatever, do you wanna wait 3 weeks for another board meeting?
Mhm.
Free up your funds?
I mean, do we have to run a passport?
No, well, we do if we don't specifically say we don't.
Oh, okay. I get it.
So in the
Yeah, so
developer's
we're gonna
agreement, if we
propose-
add that clause that staff can do
Staff
all
review.
but the final release,
Mhm.
which has to be approved by the village board.
Makes
So
sense.
when his development agreement gets to the board, we'll point out the fact that that language is in there, and that this will be the first time that we're handling it that way.
And then we'd like to include that as our standard template, in that as a standard, for how we handle developments. Or, I'm sorry, yeah,
Development agreements.
The only word of caution that I would have with that, to put that in the statute, basically, that it wouldn't have to be run past planning or the board, I guess, more so is, it's a level of oversight. And I want to make sure that we don't, miss that type of oversight with it. I want to make sure that things like you had mentioned, that there's not as-built drawings yet for the pond. You know, I wouldn't want to see staff level approving the reduction in, the withholdings until we know for certain we have the as-built. Just using that as an example. I just throw that out there as a cautionary statement. I don't want to, see it in a few years and all of a sudden we're wondering why a sedimentation pond or a retention pond's not in the right place. To use it as another example, so just a word of caution on that.
Maybe we don't put it into a ordinance and maybe it's just part of our template for developers agreements that is taken development by development. Because they're all custom tailored to each.
They are, each development agreement, it can be in one of them, it can be not in the next one.
I agree with that. Anything to
Yeah.
reduce the time that we have to spend taking a look at hopefully minor items like that, I agree with that. But I don't want to see us back in a place that it looked like we may have been 10 years ago.
Right, agreed.
10 years from now, if we still have that template and none of us sitting at this table, or any of us sitting at this table are not part of that, I want to make sure that it still stands that there's a level of oversight to that, and we haven't reduced ourselves down to the point where we can't recoup any costs that we need to fix things.
Maybe you put a percentage on
Yeah.
final release
yeah,
for the board. You know,
25%.
Can't, staff can't draw down under 25% or something.
Some kind of catch.
Yeah, 50%, yeah. I guess whatever you'd be comfortable with.
We can discuss that.
Yeah, I think larger development, I mean, this one's kind of particular in the fact that he's got a business loan that's tied to the letter of credit. It's all one pot of money. And so I think this sort of, you know, he doesn't do this a lot and probably doesn't have the financial access of like a huge home builder would have. That I think he's gonna be requesting some more frequent letter of credit reductions than like say, you know, we do huge 30 lot subdivisions and they, you know, they want one letter of credit reduction like when 80% of the work is, you know, like
Right.
Yeah, a lot of communities do limit how many drawdowns
you
you
can
make.
have,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think this one's a little different in that respect, but I agree, I mean, we don't wanna get ourselves in a position where we don't have.
It's most certainly not me trying to limit anything that we can do with just Lake Park.
Oh, no, I wasn't
Association.
trying, yeah, that was just my 2 cents about how this
Yeah.
one is
I just,
more of a.
I just want to make sure we don't get ourselves into a pickle,
Mhm.
because we have been in those pickles as a community.
Yep. Any other questions for me? Anything else you want?
So,
Great.
we'll move along then. Item 9, correspondence. Nothing. Item
Motion
10,
to adjourn?
you want to think about it?
I'll second it.
Motion in a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Are adjourned. Thank you all.
I would like to go on non-official record to say 7:55.
Good job.
Everyone?
Beautiful.
Mind you, we did start early.
Way to deflate that one.
Debbie Downer.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Maybe you could hang around for a while, you know.
That is the plan. Can't get rid of me yet.
Now you're just talking crazy.
Yeah, it's just, sometimes I just gotta get out there.
Thanks.
All right, everybody have a good night.
Sure.